I'm Kevin Thomas, Senior Pastor of Forest Lake United Methodist Church. Thank you for joining us as we look at this week's lectionary readings. Today, let's look at the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 22. We'll read verses 34 through 40. But when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had put the Sadducees to silence, they gathered themselves together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him. "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And he said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets." Well, the Sadducees were trying to trap Jesus in a common thing that they did in the first century. Religious leaders loved to get together and argue amongst themselves to debate about what the meaning of the Hebrew Bible was, what we call the Old Testament. They loved to argue about the finer points, and so they came to him and were challenging him. Which is the greatest of the laws? Now that could cause divisions. His answers could cause him to side with one group or another. Or if he's really offering this new religion, he might do something that parts all together with religious tradition, and they could use that to entrap him. Jesus, once again, with an incredibly wise answer, actually goes to the Old Testament, goes to the Bible of his day, the very words that these religious leaders believed. It's the Old Testament that says that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. It's an old law in their own religion. And Jesus brings it forward, but in such a new and powerful way that he says the one great commandment, the one most important thing for all of us is to love God with everything that we have. And then he adds to it. He says the second commandment is very similar. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, when Jesus speaks of neighbors, we may be reminded of the parable of the Good Samaritan. Jesus includes everyone as our neighbors, those that live next door to us and those who live around the world. According to the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus mysteriously even includes enemies as neighbors. And so we are to love God and to love neighbors, love others as we love ourselves. Really straightforward and straight to the point. If you think about it, if we love God perfectly, we cannot sin against God. If we love neighbor perfectly, if we love people perfectly, we cannot sin against them, at least not knowingly. In order to sin against my brother or sister, I would have to, at least to a degree, stop loving them in order to hurt them. So Jesus has summed up beautifully what the Christian ethic is. Our law is love. Love God and love people deeply. It's a pretty simple and straightforward approach, much harder in practice. We all have those people in our lives that are difficult for us to love. We don't have to do it on our own. It doesn't depend on our own strength. I hope you'll pray with me today that God's Holy Spirit will empower us to treat one another with the same kind of love that Jesus has for us.